Good morning, friends in Greater Manchester. Welcome to In It Together. I am so glad that you've tuned in. If you'd like to find us on the web, you can go to inittogether.net, listen live, or to previous shows, even link to our Facebook and Twitter. And if you like and follow us, you'll see we're bringing out the best in people to influence a positive change in this community and beyond. And we are really excited this morning to be able to invite our Facebook followers on today's program. I am going to try this out. Not worried about it. I feel like the topic today is got a lot of fun, actually, and hopefully you'll want to engage us. Today's question, which I'm going to pull up here in a second. Today's question is going to be, how important is it to be optimistic in a very pessimistic world? So we're going to be back right after this. Of course, I'm not sure if the online audience can hear all the ads and stuff that I'm playing here as well, but that's okay. We'll figure it out later. Welcome back to In It Together. I am kicking off The Good Life this morning with, yes, yours truly. That would be me, myself, and I. But hopefully you're out there too, and I am looking to connect in a greater way. And I love that we have these mediums, and it's just a greater way to be able to reach people, to connect, and I'm excited about that. Been thinking about doing this for quite some time. And realize that, there's a lot of ways that we can connect with people. And this just happens to be one. We also have Instagram. We're hoping to get on there as well. We have a channel there and even YouTube. But the main thing is our goal is bringing positive programming that encourages, that challenges people to think. And as I posted the other day, there are a lot of challenges that people don't see. They see the show up front, and then they don't understand the work that goes in behind it, and that's not real life. And so I wanna be able to talk about real things. And as an advancement strategist from Alpha Advancement Strategies, some of you may or may not know that I own that company. We do coach training, and we meet clients, and we've helped a lot of people. And so some of the topics that we talk about have a lot to do with successes that I've had in my own life, things that I've faced, and also have helped clients to overcome as well. So it's not just me going to read about things to tell you about things. A lot of people can do that, and one thing I've learned is that a bunch of head knowledge doesn't change us. But when you can relate to somebody at a place that they're like, yeah, she's talking about me. This is my life. This is what the good life is about. It's not just making a living, but it's making the life that you want. It's being realistic about what that looks like. And so I choose topics that I believe they're part of my life. They resonate with me. They're questions that I have. And so today's question, if you are listening, there's a couple of things that you can do. You can comment live on the live broadcast. the question that we have this morning is, how important is it to be optimistic? We have such a pessimistic world. Nobody gets out here alive without sharing in some of the bumps along the way, ones that aren't always planned. And I'm being real, and I'm sure that, hopefully that'll be a refreshing thing for you. I'm not going to sit here and talk at you. I'm hoping to be able to engage with you. So this morning, I invite you to come into my little world here at the In It Together studio. In It Together studios, I should say now, because we not only have this radio broadcast studio, but we also have some video studios, TV studio down the other end that we hope to bring other programming. And it's about real people doing real things to make a real impact. And everybody thinks, well, my life, how significant is my life? What does it matter what it is that I'm doing? Nobody's going to care. Well, in the sphere of influence that you have, you'd be surprised how much it really does matter. You know, let's just going back to the main question this morning, which is, how important is it to be optimistic? I have had a lot of reasons not to be optimistic. If you've done anything in your life that you've succeeded at, or you've had some kind of level of accomplishment in or achievement, you realize that it wasn't just the straight line. We've seen those funny memes where it says, when you're an entrepreneur, when it says what people think success looks like, and it's this straight line, and then it says what it really looks like, and it's this whole big scribble thing. And isn't that the way life kind of can be? And but hopefully, as we have these discussions, it's about trying to help each other along the way, maybe to prevent some of that pain, prevent some of the things that we could have avoided. And I believe that we can avoid a lot. So today's question, if you want to make a comment, is, how important is it to be optimistic? We live in a pessimistic world. So, I've just come off a week of being with this nasty flu that's been going around, and I'm so optimistic, I swore that it wouldn't touch my house, it wouldn't come next to me, and I'll still claim that no matter what. At least it could have been worse, I guess. It could have been worse. But today I'm grateful that I even have a voice. I mean, I've already had a cough drop before I went on here today, and I could have just stayed home. I was out all week last week. I was running archives, and when you don't feel well, the temptation to be pessimistic can be magnified. Or when, people are coming against you, or things are happening that are out of your control, you can really allow yourself to get caught up in that, especially when you're in a weak state. And that's why, in past shows I've talked about being confident and having mental toughness and emotional stability. Those are things that they don't just happen by accident. These are things that you develop and build in your life so that when things happen, you're not a reactor, but instead you become a responder. And not only that, you become an overcomer. You become somebody that can be a great role model for those who haven't yet learned how to handle those things. So there's been some things that I've wanted to get done over the last few weeks in regards to business that I haven't been able to do yet. I'm coming in today, coming in optimistic, not really sure how to set up this video camera and all this stuff. I have my little mini iPad over here doing this recording. I got it plugged into the sound thing, hoping that you're picking up, some of the ads and stuff I got on there. But if you don't, these are just bugs I'm going to work out. It's so easy in this pessimistic world to just say, well, I can't do anything until I have everything. Well, that's not even a realistic thought. That's actually not even an optimistic thought. That's a very pessimistic thought. It's like, well, I can't do it because of this, or whatever the excuse is. Fill in the blank. But when you come in and you already expect a good outcome, because here's what I think. I'm not going to insult the intelligence of those that are listening to me every morning by sitting here trying to be all perfect and pretending to be everything's rosy and nothing ever, no glitches ever happen in my life. I'm perfect. And that would just be, you know, a lot of people do that now, you know, but we don't know the real people, what's really behind the scenes. And quite honestly, I don't really know how to be anything else except for the real person. And I'm not going to act. I'm not going to pretend. I'm going to be, you know, I guess for lack of a better way to say it is I'm willing to be vulnerable and open. Now, I'm not talking about TMI. I'm talking about sharing some things that I want to genuinely help you. And I remember when I first started doing this program back in 2014 in December, I started doing, was on air at WMW. And it was a little nerve-wracking at first, but what I realized really quickly was if I wanted to not be nervous, I had to stop thinking about myself. So as we're thinking about being optimistic in a pessimistic world, a really good way to do that is to just stop making it all about you. And I speak to myself every day about this. You know, the worst thing that we could ever be and the worst thing that we could ever do is be very self-absorbed or self-centered. That is not an optimistic way to look at life. As a matter of fact, if you think everything revolves around you, you're inviting that pessimistic world into your life, because as soon as something doesn't go right, as soon as something doesn't go your way, as soon as there's a challenge, you're going to be the person that's melting down when you should be the one that's helping. And that's kind of where I'm coming from. So expecting a good outcome from the beginning is a really good optimistic way to start. And I just want to invite those of you who are already tuning in, I just want to say hello to you. Shoot your name down, tell me where you're from. I'm really excited that you're here. You're the reason that I even do this program, is because I'm thinking about those people who are out there who are just like me. They're out there trying to make their way in the world. They're trying to take care of business. And they have very important things to take care of in their life, important people to take care of in their life, and as do I. And it's a responsibility, you know. So choosing to remain optimistic. Definitely throw a comment in there and tell me about if you think it's important to be optimistic and why. I choose to enjoy my life every day, and it doesn't mean that I don't have moments. It doesn't mean that I don't have moments where things aren't going well, and I am tempted to get caught up in the negative and what could possibly go wrong. But I've learned over time that I'm in more control of that than I used to think. And what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is, you know, things don't happen to us. We always think, oh, if this didn't happen, then I wouldn't have this. This is happening to me. Think about it this way instead. Instead of things or life is happening to me, how about these are things that could happen, but I get to decide how I'm going to go through it myself. I get that. That's my choice, how I'm going to do it. I remember working in a local nonprofit back from 2006 to 2010, and one of the leaders there used to say, "Is my response is my responsibility," and that really sunk in with me, because in a world of constant complainers and those who will point the finger and blame everybody for why their life isn't what they want or isn't turning out the way they think it should be, I think there's a great lack of personal responsibility and a lack of being engaged in, you know, just the thought that I am in control of my life. Nothing, you know, controls my life unless I give it permission to. Think about that for a minute. So if we're thinking about having an optimistic outlook, we got to first realize that it's our choice. What a concept. I think it's a great concept. As a matter of fact, it's not only a concept that many people have been so fooled into thinking that circumstances, situations, what somebody said to somebody, and how people like you or don't like you is the gauge by which we get to enjoy our lives. It certainly is not. And, today I want to encourage you, and I want to say, be who you are without apology and without permission. You don't need permission. You don't need to apologize for who you are or what you're trying to do. And I was reading yesterday, I believe it was somebody on Facebook. He posted some kind of a meme that had something to do with the fact that, matter of fact, let me just go look it up real quick because I thought it was worthy of sharing. Trying to remember what his name was. This isn't helping me. Let's see. Well, anyway, if it comes up, I'll, if I can find it, I'll find it. Right now, I'm not going to worry about it. Either way, the whole point is, oh, okay, well, thank you, Tanya. I see Tanya Buell is here. She is connecting on our online Facebook program right now from South Carolina. Wow. I got some good friends down there. Hopefully the weather's beautiful. Tanya, it's good to hear from you. For today's question, which is how important is it to be optimistic? Tanya says that having our hope in God helps us to be optimistic, and I couldn't agree with you more, Tanya. And that's kind of where I'm going. I mean, it's so easy for us to talk about what's wrong all the time, but we got to understand, well, how do we get it to a place where it's right, okay? What have you been facing lately? Probably every day we each face things that can cause us to be pessimistic if we chose to take that route. But that doesn't ever serve us well. If anything, it magnifies the problem. So I'd really like to know what challenges you've had lately that you had a choice to be optimistic or pessimistic, and you know what, even if you were pessimistic, I'm okay with you sharing how that turned out, because my thought is there's a pretty good chance it didn't turn out well right away. But we can also learn from the mistakes, and I think a lot of times we don't realize that. We try to hide what's wrong, and then we only want to show all the good stuff. That's not even real. That's not even real. Okay, so there are actually, I was reading an article called 10 Common Obstacles People Face in Their Life. And this may spur on some thoughts about challenges that you've had recently, to say which one did I choose? Did I choose to be pessimistic or optimistic? And so the first one is money. Who hasn't had a time in their life where they've struggled with some money, feeling like they don't have enough money, or you start saving some money and all of a sudden your car breaks or your appliance breaks, and then you have to use the money you saved for something that you've been wanting to have something else. And I'll tell you, everybody understands this. But see, all these things I'm going to name off, these are 10 common obstacles we face. Number one is I'm actually going from 10 backwards. So 10 is money. Money is definitely an area that people can struggle with. But do we have to struggle with? That becomes the question. And as Tanya says, before, she was talking about how her hope in God helps us to be optimistic. And that is true, and that is in every one of these areas that we're talking about. It does matter. Why does it matter? Well, because optimism is really faith. Think about that for a second. Optimism is, I actually have somewhat of a, let's look at pessimism first. Pessimism is a hopeless, cynical way to look at things. It's like the doctrine that reality is essentially evil, or it overbalances the happiness of our life. Okay, so in contrast, optimism puts a favorable spin on this doom and gloom, and it creates another option, which is the best possible outcome that we could have. Okay, so from my experience, whichever one I choose quickly becomes my reality. And I've learned that if I don't choose the optimism quick, I can sink really, really fast. Let's see, I got another post here from Lynn. Lynn, it's good to see you this morning on here. Appreciate you tuning in via Facebook Live. Um, so she said last week she chose to be grateful that she had money for a car repair and that it could bless her mechanic with some work. And she's laughing because there is this kind of, well, it didn't feel good that he took my money, but I'm sure that he needed it for his family too. You know, here's the thing. We're in control of only so much. But if, like Tanya was saying before, if really we're walking a walk of faith here and we're believing that our life and the decisions that we make based on what we're handed in life are really what God's will is, then sometimes it may not look it, but if we're optimistic, we may start to see it different than we do now. It's looking at it from another vantage point. So thanks for that funny joke, Lynn. Anybody else? If you have had a challenge, okay, we started going through the 10 things. The first one was money. Next one is career issues. All right. I don't know about you, but especially as an entrepreneur, when you're always putting yourself out there, new projects, you always have to improve what you're doing. You know, I didn't start off knowing how to run all this. I'm actually going to turn this camera around real quick and show you a couple of things here. One is this is the soundboard over here that I have to know how to use. And then of course this is the platform where I broadcast live from. Okay, all these things, I didn't know how to do any of those things. Of course, using microphones, hooking things up. This is my other computer with all my notes and my Facebook and internet. And all right, so Tanya is continuing the conversation, and she's saying that she's going through extended family issues that are painful for her. And she said she was pessimistic for a long while because it wasn't easy. But as soon as she gave it to God, He's been showing her that He's in control, and I can rest in knowing He will take care of what concerns me. Okay, Tanya, I love what you're sharing. Now, here's the thing about me and about this show that you're going to know. It's going to be, we're going to have a conversation, and it's going to be real, okay? I can honestly tell you right now, I understand the reasoning behind what you're saying. But I just want to encourage you, and I want to tell you that when you said, when you gave it to God, He's been showing you He's in control, and I can rest knowing He will take care of it. In a sense, I understand what you're saying. Yes, when we are in a place of rest, we can absolutely see that God is taking care of things. We can absolutely do that. It's a place of where we yield to Him. We yield to His Spirit, and we surrender our not necessarily control, but we surrender our will, for His will. And what I mean by that is we align ourselves to His will. So now it doesn't become it's God's way or my way. It becomes it's us. It's our way. In other words, we're one with God, and we begin to walk with Him in the unforced rhythms of His grace. And so that's where I believe, you know, a lot of times people say God is in control, and I think it's kind of a tricky thing to say, because if God's in control, then people go, well, then why are so many babies aborted every year? Why are people still hungry? Every time Jesus did something, every time God did something, He used a person. Okay, and when we come to Christ and we become one with Him in spirit, Jesus prayed this, that they would be one even as we are one. And He said, I do nothing unless I see my Father do it first. So if that's the case, and we begin to walk through this life, we got to not see ourselves separate from God. And I think a lot of the things that we fall into is because we do see ourselves separate from Him. And we don't want to be doing that. We don't want to see ourselves separate from Him. Trying to look at the comments here, see if there's anybody else making comments. Anyways, I just want to welcome those who are just coming in. Like, there's a question today about how important is it to be optimistic in life. And we've talked about how real optimism is really about faith. It's about faith, not in your own natural abilities, but in your own weaknesses, that God can be our strength in that, and that we're not separate from Him, and that we realize our oneness with Him, that it's no longer about what God can do or what I can do, but it's what we do together. And I'm supposed to be taking a short break here. I don't know if you guys can hear these promos and ads that I'm going to be running here, but I'm going to run one here for a minute for the radio audience. And stay tuned, though. Keep your questions coming. I want to have a conversation with you still, but I'll be right back for those listening via radio after this brief message. Stay tuned. Welcome back to In It Together in the midst of the good life this morning with yours truly. And this morning's question to you, especially those in the Facebook audience, is how important is it to be optimistic? I can see your comments there real time, having a great conversation, getting some great feedback. But I don't even know yet, starting this, obviously, this video on Facebook at the same time as I'm doing a live broadcast. I'm not quite sure if you guys can hear the promos and the music and the ads and all this radio stuff that goes on here or not through the thing. I guess I'll find out later on. You guys can let me know. So we've been talking about being optimistic and the 10 common obstacles people face in their life. One is definitely the area of money. Another one could be in the area of career, getting things moving. If you're trying to get an ideal job, or you're like me, you're entrepreneurial and you have a business and you have a radio show, and then you're moving into video and TV and things like that. There could be a lot of, especially when you work with other people. If you have an organization and you have to collaborate with different people, there's a lot of miscommunications. I've had many of those, especially over like email and things like that. This is why I prefer the face-to-face conversations where people can hear the tone of your voice and not make assumptions. Okay, so that's a big thing right there. Optimistic people, we think the best about people. We don't make assumptions about what, or read too much into what somebody might be thinking. As I said earlier in the show, have we become that self-absorbed that we've lost our ability to just be gracious to people and to think the best about them instead of making negative assumptions? Another thing people deal with is the whole work-life balance, trying to handle family responsibilities and work responsibilities. Some of you ministry responsibilities. Same with myself. I mean, I have ministry, I have business, I have the radio show, I have my family. There's a lot of things that I have responsibilities for. But here's the thing I've learned. In an optimistic world, you can have a lot of things you're doing and not be overwhelmed. See, that's a difference. I know someone that can't do one thing without being overwhelmed. And then I know people who get more accomplished in a day than most people do in a week, and yet they're at complete peace. And this goes back to what Tanya was saying before, and if you're listening, I'm sure that you can relate to this, is it really comes down to who do we really know who we are? When I say that, who we are in Christ, who we are in God, do we really know who we are so that we understand that there's only one place that peace comes from, and that is in relationship with Him. He's the only one that gives us peace. This world can't give us that. It can't give us the peace that we're looking for. But here's the cool thing, is when we're living, it's not about living a life that we're trying to constantly bombard the things coming at us, but it's living from a life where those things can't penetrate us, but we can penetrate them with the truth, and we can penetrate them with the life, and we can actually bring the change being aligned to that. Okay, so if you've had problems at work, how about relationships? Obstacles with relationships. I said before, communication is one of the top ones that people can have trouble with. That can help you. Sometimes that can get you to a place years and years ago before I understood some things. I get been around a little while. I'm not going to tell you how many years, but I will tell you, I had my Jubilee a few years ago. And if you don't know what that is, look it up. Those of you who do know what it is, you're probably right there with me. And you understand that when you were back in your 20s and 30s, you responded or reacted to things a lot differently. And now you respond to them. Before you were reacting as if the outside could come in and change your inside. And now you're reacting or responding in a way that you know that your internal state is the most important thing, because now we can change those things that are trying to come at us. Anyway, another thing that people struggle with: money, career, illness. I told you last week I had the flu. I've had other things that I've dealt with in my life as well. And but there's no excuse. There's just no excuse to have to be a pessimistic person whatsoever. You know, pessimism and optimism, it just comes down to, do I have faith or I don't? That's really what it comes down to. And this is what sets before us every day. It says it in I believe it's Deuteronomy. It says, I set before you life and death. Choose life. And so what does that look like? Well, that's like, well, I'm going to, in the face of adversity, choose the path that I know is right and true, not easy. That takes personal responsibility and commitment to something greater than yourself. And it's making yourself accountable. So another thing is when you have to make tough decisions. If you've ever had to make a decision about a transition in your life, maybe moving somewhere far. Let's see, Tanya's got another comment here. She says, it's in the knowledge, too, that we're not alone, and what we may be going through, He's with us in everything, and that helps me feel optimistic. Tanya, I love that. And that's what it is we are not alone. And even more important than not being alone is knowing that we are not separate from God. We are one with Him in spirit when we come to Him. And that's a pretty amazing thought if you think about it. And not only that, but we're one with each other. We're connected to one another, whether we admit it, whether we know it. But that's the reality of it. And the sooner we start to realize it, and here's something that I like to say is, what you withhold from others, you withhold from yourself. And what you give to others, you give to yourself. So what would you like? If you want to put in your order today, then you go and you be the very thing that you need. And that's what I've learned in my life. If you want to talk about being optimistic or having faith, that's when you refuse to be self-centered and self-absorbed, when you refuse to cry for yourself when you're going through something difficult. That's when you stand up and you say, wait a second, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to feel sorry for myself, because there are a lot of people out there who are a lot worse off than I am. And I'm going to be optimistic, because here's the thing. If I start to feel sorry for myself, not only am I not going to help myself, I'm not going to help anybody. And here's what I've learned. You know, the Word of God tells us, whatsoever we do unto men, the same we'll receive from the Lord. And that's how we want to live. If you want to live optimistic, or a better word for it is, if you want to live in real faith, when you need something, you go and you help somebody else who needs it. And then you watch and see what happens to your life. You watch how it turns around. You watch how you begin to attract the things in your life that you wanted and needed the most. You know, because God will not forget you. He will not forget you. He has not forgotten you. If anything, we forget him. So, from my experience, whichever I choose, optimism or pessimism, it's kind of like we've heard that saying, every cloud has a silver lining. Well, you know, a lot of times our personalities, we could be born with personalities that have a tendency of being negative or seeing what's wrong before we see what's right. I was like that many, many years ago. I read a book called Personality Plus by Florence Littau, and it talked about the different personalities. And I'll just sum it up to you really quick. There's 4 main personalities. The first one's a choleric, which say a building is on fire. The choleric personality comes out and he begins to start telling everybody what it is that you should be doing. You should go over here, you should go do that. It's somebody who's a born leader. Okay, and then the sanguine is the fun-loving person that just kind of says, oh, cool, a fire. Somebody get the marshmallows and hot dogs, and they want to have a party in everything they're doing. Then there's the melancholy, which was part of my personality, where I was measuring out how much water it would take per, square inch to get the fire out and where the fire hoses should be, and, just organizing things in my mind. And then the phlegmatics were the ones who they would stand there and they just kind of wondering what's going on altogether. So if you look at those different personalities, you can quickly see some people have an easier time with being optimistic than other people do, just by the personality they were born with. But here's the good news. I would say the great, I don't want to say the balancer. The greatest equalizer is Jesus. When we accept him into our life and we have holes in our personality that need to be filled in, he fills all things. So he's the great equalizer. And when we begin to have a revelation of who he is and in our relationship with him, what that means, now all of a sudden we get transformed, like the word tells us, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And so we begin to get transformed into the same image that we're looking at. So if we're looking at him, the solution, the answer, the way, the truth, and the life, then our life begins to align to that. And then that becomes the result of it. So whatever it is that we're focusing on starts to grow. Where focus goes, the energy flows, right? I was reading another article called 7 Tips to Find the Silver Lining Within Yourself. Okay, so every cloud has a silver lining. The editor-in-chief of goodnet.org, Elena Goldberg, writes, it's more than just believing that good things are to come. It's an understanding that every negative is actually a positive, depending on how you see it. Think about that. Well, it's true, right? There's always another side of every coin. And she gives some research that was done at NYU that dubbed silver lining a silver lining theory. Okay? And she said the concept holds that some 90% of people believe that their negative traits are actually strengths in disguise. Well, it makes perfect sense. We did a show a few weeks back where we talk about how there's always tests in our life, and when we pass them, we don't have to retake them. So one of our greatest threats is not passing a test. And so life is a test. We can either look at it pessimistically and feel sorry for ourselves and feel like we're a victim and that our life is because of everybody else. But I'm going to tell you an honest, bold truth right now. Our lives are the sum total of every decision that we have made and what we've thought about it. That can do one of two things. That can make you really mad right now, or that can make you take responsibility for it. And what I mean by that is responsibility to be in faith and optimism with how God sees something from his vantage point, from his perspective, because it's way bigger than ours. We're pretty much out of time here, but let me just tell you this. If you think about it this way, you're watching a football game. Let's say we're watching the Super Bowl on TV. And all the runners, all they can see from the ground as those that are around them. But and then in hindsight, you've heard people who yell at the game, and they always say, "Wow, all he had to do was run left." Well, the reality is he can't see that aerial view that we get when we watch it. We watch it from, you know, the comfort of our cushy homes on our widescreen flat TVs with popcorn, and we get to the advantage of seeing the whole picture. And that's what we're learning to do. When we learn to be optimistic, we're saying to ourselves, I'm no longer going to try to look at everything from my meager little place, from my little spot here, because it's not just all about me and the world doesn't revolve around me. But now I'm going to try to look at it from a higher place, from the big picture, from God's vantage point, because he's got an aerial view. And guess what? We get it too. As long as we are connected with him, we're going to get it too. Unfortunately, I'm out of time. I want to thank all those who tuned in via Facebook. You know, continue to make comments afterwards. I want to hear, you know, the challenges you've had as far as staying optimistic or staying in faith versus pessimistic, and how important that is. I am going to, in my radio show here, I gotta run an ad. So have a great day.